City Current. Produced by Dakota Media Access. In-depth discussion with Bismarck and Mandan city officials. Watch on Government Access Channel 602 HD or tune in to Radio Access 102.5 FM. Always local, always current.
Welcome to City Current. I'm Tom Gerhardt from Dakota Media Access, and joining me, as always, at least every other week, is Bismarck City Administrator Jason Tomatic. Great to see you, Jason.
Thanks, Tom. I'm glad to be here.
Fresh off a City Commission meeting. Coming up on City Current today, we'll be talking about a number of things, but not limited to. The Board of Health met last night before the City Commission, and we'll talk about the strategic plan that they're working on. Also a big topic last night during the City Commission meeting, Class D liquor licenses. And although I think we're supposed to have a 90-degree day this week, we're talking about fall leaf collection, and sounds like we have a plan moving forward.
We've got some options.
All right, well, can't wait to get to that, but the meeting began last night with a proclamation.
Yeah, our friends at AARP are celebrating 90 years of Social Security, and so we're always glad to see former City Commissioner, State AARP Director Josh Askvig, and he brought a team of friends wearing red shirts, and I believe our communications strategist Kayla O's got a picture, shared it on social media, and so the proclamation, it's very much a ceremonial thing, but it's also a nice way to recognize some milestones, and kudos to AARP and their team, and also the team of volunteers that they've got in Bismarck and across the state, because I know they do great things, not just for Bismarck, but for everybody that they can throughout North Dakota. So high five to Josh and the staff over at AARP, and if you like that stuff, you can go to our social media page and engage with that and share your comments on the picture too.
And it was Kaylin, because I was watching the meeting last night on Dakota Media Access, and I saw, I was going to take a screenshot, but then it included Kaylin, so
Sure.
I'm glad he did take the photo, so
Yep.
it's an unobstructed view of the AARP crew and the
I
commission.
suppose if you're at home watching, you've got a different perspective.
Yes.
Because Kayla stands
You're
right
in
in front
live,
of the
yep.
camera, and I'm off to the side, so I got all of it. I get you.
Well, we mentioned the Board of Health and strategic plan, and Renee was able to provide an update on what she's been working on.
She and the team at Public Health are always busy, but right now they've been going through their strategic planning process, which is a normal iteration. About every 3 years, they'll go through and update the strategic plan. We've talked about this before when Board of Health has met, and maybe just to back up a little bit for those that aren't really sure what the Board of Health is. It is essentially the city commissioners. They assume a different role as the Board of Health. It is something that is required by Century Code because we have a public health district. Board of Health needs to meet and convene quarterly, and so Renee provides an update about 3 or 4 times a year. And so the update this time, they were talking about, of course, the service area, the mission, the vision, the values that public health holds, but also more recently, what has been driving the future of public health. And the community health needs assessment is something that we've talked about here. That is a fairly large project that the public health department goes through to really get the pulse of what are the emerging needs in the community, and behavioral health, mental health, addiction, homelessness. These are all things that come to the top of the list. Obviously, we've talked about the work that Renee is doing as far as the community triage center. That is a big project for public health as well, and sharing some of the goals and objectives as they move forward into the next 2-3 years. And for Renee, the timing of the public health strategic plan is very opportunistic. We as the city of Bismarck are also updating our own organizational strategic plan, and so for these two, for a department to overlap with the organizational plan, it just reinforces the value of having a plan and knowing where we want to be in the next 2, 3, 5 years from here.
Yeah.
So she did a nice job. Her full report is part of the agenda. For anybody that would like to read it in depth, you can go to the bismarcknd.gov and click on the Agenda Center, and you can find it in its entirety.
And we had the 4 strategic focus areas up on screen for a little bit. I'll just reiterate: behavioral health, healthy living, access to healthcare, preparedness, and public safety. And thanks to an idea, I think, that came from you, if you go back and watch the archived meeting, you can scan the QR code, which will lead you to the agenda, which will lead you to the public health plan.
simple.
Beautiful.
As long as the technology wants to cooperate, we're trying to make it as accessible as we can for everybody.
Absolutely.
So,
We had the first public comment time last night at a Bismarck City Commission meeting, at least in terms of what the legislature passed this past spring, that opened it up at every public meeting, and we actually had a couple of folks step up to the mic and contribute. They were commenting on, I believe, liquor license and special event permits.
correct. On the consent agenda, there is a call for a hearing. There is a proposed ordinance amendment that relates to the alcohol licenses, so that's coming from the City Administration Department. We work with the legal department to draft proposed language that would change the law, change the ordinance. What we're doing here is addressing some changes that needed to be made to how special events are administered. And so what is a special event? It is a permit that our office issues to an alcohol license holder. And essentially what it does is it allows them to take their alcohol to a separate location for a specific event for a set number of days or a set period of time. Some clarification needed to be incorporated into the ordinance, and what we heard from the two individuals that spoke last night, what I believe their concerns were is that they were hoping to not see a cap or not see a limit on the number of special events that they can do annually, and that comes from the perspective of being a catering company. That's primarily what their business is. Their show is on the road all the time, and so I think it's a fair comment to be made for the city to determine that, no, we think you can only do X number of events a year. It seems a little heavy-handed, and so that, to clarify though, that is not incorporated into the ordinance. And the mayor did encourage the second individual that spoke to read the ordinance in its entirety. There is no intention to put a set number of times per year you can have a special event. So I hope that clarifies for those two individuals. And I guess just to finish this conversation, in 2 weeks, there will be the public hearing, and so they are welcome back to that meeting. They can speak during that portion of the meeting, or anyone else that has questions or comments relating to the proposed ordinance changes. That's the purpose of the public hearing.
Moving on to the regular agenda from last night, there's a public hearing on a couple of ordinances that involve traffic laws and some maintenance or cleaning up, I guess you could say, again, related to the 2025 legislative session. And Ordinance 6630 involved a number of traffic-related
changes.
changes.
And I don't want to get into the practice of reading the entire ordinance. I am certainly not the attorney or the law enforcement officer that has to interpret these, but for anybody that is interested, there are changes to how careless driving is enforced, speeds in a construction zone, and then therefore the fines associated with speeding in the construction zone. Passing a school bus, those fines have gone up as well. And parking for mobility impaired individuals, many of us are familiar with the placard that is typically hung on the mirror. The law change now says it is also acceptable to place the placard on the dash of your vehicle, which seems like a good common sense thing. I know I've seen that a number of times. And then the last thing that's changed in 6630 relates to signaling when leaving a roundabout. You no longer need to turn your blinker on when you go to exit a roundabout. So for those that weren't sure, do you signal on the way in? Do you signal on the way out? You can signal as much as you'd like, but the law says you no longer have to signal when you leave the roundabout.
And I recall, and it may have been the police department or the city, a social media post probably related to 43rd Street. I remember that being a very hot topic of conversation at some point. So I don't mean to smile, but I know that people were very worked up about that at one point.
For whatever reason, roundabouts get a lot of attention. Our city engineer will tell you that they are safe, they move traffic efficiently, and it's quite likely we will be seeing more of them in the future. Yep.
Ordinance 6633 caught my attention because that's also an update that would say you're obstructing law enforcement, a police officer, if you fail to identify yourself.
Right, and failing to identify yourself means something as simple as not handing over your driver's license or identification when you are requested to do so. And you may not even be the driver of the vehicle, but if you are refusing to provide that information to a law enforcement officer, that could be determined as obstructing a law enforcement officer from doing their duty. And so that now becomes a penalty. And I will read this one because it is a short ordinance amendment. So this applies to Chapter 6, Section 2-11 of the city code, and it says obstructing law enforcement officers in discharge of their duties. That's the title of the ordinance. A person is guilty of obstructing a law enforcement officer if the person willfully engages in a physical action, inaction, or refuses to obey the lawful commands of a law enforcement officer which hinders, delays, or obstructs any law enforcement officer in the discharge of his or her official duties. So if you get in a fight, that's one thing, that's obstructing law enforcement. But if you simply do nothing and refuse to comply, you may be charged with obstructing law enforcement.
All right, that's the update there. I think that was good you read the whole ordinance for everyone. Really interesting item last night, at least for me last night, moving on the agenda, was the request to release additional Class D liquor licenses. And from what I can gather, the number of licenses is based on population. Bismarck continues to grow. I think we heard from you last night, the last license was issued in 2023.
Correct.
And the bid was over $300,000 for that license. So,
That's right.
And not to steal all of your thunder, just had a couple of notes here. 26 Class D liquor licenses currently.
Right.
We could provide up to 5 additional based on our population.
That's exactly
and
right.
so fill in the details of the conversation that ensued with the commissioners last night and where we stand after the meeting.
So this is one of those, I'll say the word unfortunate topics where the answer is, well, this is the way we've always done it. So this is a method that has been longstanding in Bismarck, this practice of limiting the number of Class D licenses. And so what can you do with a Class D license? Well, you can do really 2 things. You can own and operate a bar, or, I'll say it 3 things. You can own and operate a bar, you can own and operate a package store, a liquor store, or you can do both using the same license. And so we have a couple businesses in town that have a traditional bar, which is also attached to a liquor store. That's one license.
They have to be attached.
They have to be attached. You have to be able to move between the 2 spaces because it is considered one business, one license for us. Many of the licenses you see are simply a package store. And I'm not going to name all of those, but we know who they are in town. And so you can purchase your products, you take them home, and you consume them there. The other half of that license are the traditional bars where you can go and have a drink and maybe some snacks or entertainment or whatever the case may be. Historically, we have limited the number of bars in the community, and this is a system that my predecessors inherited. I'm not even sure how long it's been this way. I have seen liquor licenses back into the 1950s, and it is my understanding we were doing this same practice then. Long-standing tradition in the city of Bismarck. So where are we today? We're at about 77,000 people. We haven't issued a new license in a couple of years, but we've had a number of requests recently, and that's generally what spawns this conversation. Is our office is contacted by a potential new business or a business looking to expand or do things differently in the community, and they call us and say, how do I get a Class D license? And we say, well, we can't just simply issue them. We have to go through a process, and the process is essentially what Doug Wiles did for us last night. Shared the information with the commissioners. Here's the last time we issued a license. Here's where the population is. We've had a number of people interested. I think Doug shared there's as many as 7 requests. Right. So that to me says there's a strong interest. And so where do we go from here? Commissioner Zanker noted that the local government, in this case, City of Bismarck, has created a bit of a commodity with these D licenses because we limit the number of them. The other thing that is unique about the D license is it is transferable. In other words, you can sell it to another entity and they can turn that into their own business, or they can purchase your business and make it go forward that way. A restaurant license is not the same. If a restaurant closes, the license simply just dissolves. There's no limit on the number of restaurant licenses. So that's kind of the unique distinction with the Class D. So we've got 7 potential places that are looking for a new D. Commissioner Zanker made a motion, and it was supported unanimously to issue 3 new licenses. And so how do we issue those licenses? It becomes a sealed bid process. We will put a notice on the website. We will put a public notice in the Tribune. We will make the announcements on social media, our traditional methods of communication. We will accept, city administration will accept sealed bids. I don't know the dates, but it'll be in the not too distant future. We will publicly open these bids. And just like any other project, the 3 highest bids will, as long as they qualify and can meet all the requirements of owning a Class D license, would be my understanding that our recommendation to the commission would be to accept those 3 highest bids.
And last night, did you mention there's a minimum bid?
There is a minimum. The ordinance allows the commission to set the minimum bid threshold, and Commissioner Zenker, as part of his motion, directed staff to follow the model we used in 2023. At that time, the minimum base bid was $200,000. So let's do quick math. If it's a minimum of $200,000, we've got 3 of them out there. We're talking about potential of generating over $500,000 for the city's general fund. Why is that important? Because many departments are operating off the general fund, but most importantly, the police department is the largest consumer of the general fund dollars, and the police department is likely the one that is going to be responsible for enforcing any of the things that can come along with an alcohol license.
Yeah.
So it's all part of how the city works. There's a method to some of the approach. Some would like to see the licenses tweaked a little bit, and maybe some of these traditional Class D, these legacy licenses, as I'll call them, maybe those become a little more attainable, or maybe there's a different model to give people a better opportunity to get into the business. But for local government to determine how many of these licenses are available, some might say that's really not the role of government.
Yeah.
But some might say it's an important tool to have to make sure that our community remains wholesome and safe and all the things that we want it to be as well. So there's a delicate balance. That's why we elect the politicians. They get to make those decisions.
Well, and then moving from Class D liquor licenses to fall leaf collection. So, I mean, it just gives you some insight on, as a city administrator, as a city department, as a city commission, all the variety of things that you have to work with. But leaf collection is also a very hot topic.
It is.
And
depending on which part of town you
depending
live in.
yeah, up north maybe not so much yet, but in the older parts of town certainly. And I've lived in both, so I verify what you're saying. But we got an update on what will happen this fall. It sounds like we are moving forward with fall leaf collection.
We will be offering some type of leaf collection in the fall.
But the idea was brought up at the last meeting, I believe. Does the city provide some bags? How do we collect these leaves?
Right, and so Steve Salwai, Public Works Service Operations Director, did a really nice job of sharing the information that he and his team have gathered over the last couple of months. And Steve even brought some show and tell materials. He had these 30-gallon paper bags that you can often find at the larger home centers and the retail stores. Those bags are specifically designed exactly for that, for compostable leaf collection.
So you're not filling up the landfill.
You're not filling the landfill. Those would end up in the compost area with the lawn clippings that we gather all summer long. And it adds to that nutrient-rich material that you can frankly purchase from the landfill, or in some cases take from the landfill if you're looking for compost. So that was one option. And Steve shared some of the comments from citizens along the way. The city should provide a container, meaning just like your trash container, we should have a leaf container. That might work for some, but I know when we took on recycling citywide, some of the pushback there was, I don't have room for another 96-gallon container on my property. I don't want that.
Yeah.
So, again, it might work for some, but it may not work for all. One of the other suggestions was don't do anything, and people can just mulch the leaves into their lawn. Okay, that might work for some if you don't have an abundance of leaves. But if you live in the Cathedral District, if you live near Hillside, if you've got mature elm trees,
Yeah.
I don't know that you can mulch all of those leaves. So that, again, appreciate the suggestion, but it may not work for everyone. Then they looked at compostable plastic bags, but under our landfill conditions, they don't actually break down. So it just becomes more trash in the landfill. So Steve said that's not an option for us at all. And then they looked at providing paper bags. And from what I gathered from Steve's information, it really isn't cost effective for us, the city, to be purchasing bags to hand them out to people or to try and even resell them to people, because at the retail centers you can get them cheaper than we can get them in bulk.
Right. The city would have to buy them in bulk.
By the
I can
tens of thousands.
I can run to a local business and
do the
30,
same.
60 cents a bag, something like that.
Yep.
Is it? Yeah.
So Commissioner Cleary had some thoughts. Of course, this is her portfolio. She said if we're going to be doing leaf pickup, the containers would need to be compostable. That seems like a pretty fair assessment, because what we're ultimately trying to do is preserve the life of the landfill. The landfill is a very expensive operation, a very significant investment into frankly, a hole in the ground. And the more things that we can prevent from filling that hole quicker
You're saving taxpayers.
Saves all of the money that went into resources to establish that site. And building a new landfill is not an easy task, and so we want to hold on to the site as long as we can. So we don't want to throw trash in the landfill. We don't want to put leaves in the landfill in a plastic bag. So that one's not going to move forward. Leaf pickup is desired by some, but not for all. And so if we start providing that service, are some residents subsidizing the service for others? And so in the end, I think where the general consensus was, the hope is, weather dependent, that 2 times in the fall, city crews will get out and collect those leaves that would be placed out on the boulevard, whether they be in a container or a compostable bag. If they're in a plastic bag, I think that provides a different challenge moving forward. But this is something that will be done as a service throughout the community. And obviously there's neighborhoods that are going to have more attention just based on the tree volume than others. So.
And this is my understanding too. Steve didn't want to set a date because of weather. The idea is there will be 2 pickups, but he'll have flexibility to determine based upon weather when those times will be.
Correct. And we'll announce those as we typically do through local media, through social media. And if we get snow in October, we might only have one pickup.
Right.
Yeah, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature on some of these things as well. So, and I should also mention the self-drop sites. There's 17 of them across the city. Those will continue to be fully staffed. Containers, recycled in and out, new containers, full ones removed, things like that. So that is still an option if you're able, if you have the means to haul the leaves to those self-drop sites. Those will continue to be there for you as well.
Toward the end of the agenda last night, Dimitri came up, the finance director for the city, talked about the 2024 annual comprehensive financial report. It sounds like that's really important in long-range planning and budgeting.
It's an audit. It's an annual audit of the city's books and our financial functions to make sure that we are doing things in accordance with government accounting standards. And I'm pleased to say that we had a fairly clean report. We did have one finding related to some operations at the event center, and we had that finding last year, so it wasn't a shock because we haven't moved to that third-party model just yet, and so some of the operational things are as they were. We were anticipating that would be the case, but otherwise, we are pleased to say that we've got very competent staff, very professional staff working in our finance and fiscal services areas. And for anybody that is interested, the full audit is posted to the city's website, as are past audits as well. And so if that's your jam, if you like to read those.
160 pages, I think I heard last night.
A mere 160 pages of very technical information, but also it's a very nice thing to be able to say that we are proud that we do have a very high level and a very achievable goal of having a good audit every year, and that's great for us.
And the transparency is there if the public wants
Absolutely.
to dig in. A couple other notes. September 2nd, the combined Bismarck-Burley Commission will meet again, and it sounds like you're going to tee up that next special meeting at that time, talking about the ETA.
Right. So the two combined commissions met on August 5th. You and I have not met since that time, but that was all 5 city commissioners at the table and 4 county commissioners at the table and 1 online. Commissioner Munson participated remotely. So all 10 elected leaders from Bismarck and Burley County at the table. And it was an opportunity to share information. City staff, primarily Ben Arith from Community Development, shared the history of the ETA. We're talking about the extraterritorial area. This is a negotiated boundary beyond city limits where the city of Bismarck takes the lead in relation to development. In other words, we have jurisdiction for zoning and then also for building inspections and permitting. The county commissioners, some of them have indicated they would like us to have a significantly reduced area. The city of Bismarck, from my perspective and from an organizational perspective, the ETA is a very important tool because it helps us grow into these areas where we know we can continue to provide services. Bismarck has consistently added 1,000 people every year for the last 20 years. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by very intentional, very well-informed decisions made to extend utilities into areas where we can get them, extend roads into areas where we can get them. So we're not just willy-nilly saying yes to every single subdivision that's coming at us. Some of the information that was shared through the public comment relates to some concerns and some frustrations that people within the ETA have. And as a result of that, and this is not new information, this is not new feedback, it's not a surprise to anybody. This has been an ongoing discussion for decades. And where we are today, where the commissioners agreed, is that city staff, in conjunction with county staff, will begin looking at the jurisdictional maps. Are there subdivisions in our jurisdiction that will likely never be a part of city limits? And I can tell you, having started in the community development department 20 years ago, the mindset was that at this rate, we will grow into these rural subdivisions. And I think today, staff has a little different perspective at some of the significant challenges that it would take to provide water and sewer services to some of these rural large lot subdivisions. And so, are there subdivisions that are nearly built out or entirely built out that are around the edges of the city that, quite frankly, will never change? And those would be areas that we as city staff would be interested in saying, you know, Burley County, by all means, we'll take this out of the ETA. It was noted, though, during the Joint Commissions meeting, the Burley County Planning and Zoning Department is a staff of 3 people. And if they're going to be inheriting more jurisdiction, it would likely mean the need for additional staff as well. So that would be something Burley County is going to have to balance and consider. But I believe the pledge will be to talk about what the map changes could look like at the Bismarck-Burley Combined Commissions meeting. And so that is County Commissioner Steve Bakken, County Auditor Mark Splonskowski, Bismarck Mayor Mike Schmitz, and myself. The 4 of us meet every month. That is the first Tuesday of the month at 4 o'clock. Of course, you guys host that meeting online as well, and on cable. And so at that meeting in September 2nd, we will begin talking about how do those map changes get evaluated? How do we come back with a recommendation? What is the date for the next joint meeting between the full commission so we can really start talking about changes to the extraterritorial area?
And if you want to, we did start to carry. We had a couple of meetings at the same time during that last combined meeting, but it is online if anybody wants to go back on dakotamediaaccess.org and find it and inform yourself to be prepared moving forward. And speaking of moving forward, it's hard to believe, but it's back to school time in Bismarck.
Time.
Man, yeah.
I've heard it from others. I'll admit my kids are no longer in public school. They're college-age students at this point, but I was at the mall this weekend and I forgot it was back to school shopping. I was looking for a pair of sneakers and I was overwhelmed by families
ill-timed.
doing the exact same thing. So thank you for mentioning that. We are not the Bismarck Public School District. We are the city of Bismarck, but we are still very much interested in the safety of the students and back to school time. Young drivers, new schools, families, different pickup and drop-off times. I think the elementary schools are starting a little earlier than they have in the past, and the busing is...
Right.
The busing schedule is a little different too.
Graphic, I guess it doesn't show the times, but just a reminder to parents that yes, the elementary students start the earliest, I believe 7:50,
something like that.
Yeah. And then middle school and secondary, all different times due to that busing issue, trying to get kids moved to and from school. So
the city of Bismarck. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the 19th for public schools. I think you said
the 14th for Light of Christ St. Mary's. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
that's this week.
That's this week. And, just a little nugget of information. I love tidbits. And again, we're not the school district, but Bismarck has the largest public school district in the state of North Dakota. I find that staggering. City of Fargo has close to 50,000 more residents than we do, but we have more kids in public school than Fargo.
Yep, that's correct.
That's amazing. I think there's 18 elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, public schools only. And then, of course, you add the Cathedral, St. Mary's, St. Anne's, all of those in as well. And so that tells me there's a lot of young families, but it also tells me as a driver, be mindful.
Be cautious.
Slow down. If you're in those areas where there's high traffic or lots of kids running around, school buses, we mentioned, fees went up, fines went up for passing a school bus.
As of August 1st.
As of August 1st. So take it easy, watch for the kiddos, and good luck.
At least
to all the families,
at least the parents
teachers.
can get back in a routine, maybe, right? I don't know, trying to look on the bright side.
Yeah.
But, it's such a nice time of year. But football seasons and all the sports and
All the fall
that'll
sports
that'll
activate
be
as
fun.
well.
And speaking of streets, just a reminder that if you want to find out what's going on in Bismarck as far as construction goes, you can go to bismarcknd.gov/streets to find out the latest. And finally, we've talked a couple of times about if you want to go back and access archives of any of the city commission or county commission meetings or school board, park district, they're all on our app, the DMA app, and you can also watch them live on the app. And then we have our sister Radio Access 102.5 app that has a variety of podcasts and locally produced radio programs too that you can check out. And I know that you're a frequent listener.
I'm a fan of History Hot Dish. I can't deny it. But actually, this morning, as I was getting ready and going about my routine, I was listening to the latest episode of Bismarck Insights with Michael Mart, our Public Works Utility Operations Director. So I listened to all of it.
Yeah, and we appreciate
Good
it.
stuff.
Well, thanks, Jason, for joining us, and thanks to you for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.
For more information on what was discussed in this episode of City Current, visit bismarcknd.gov or call 701-355-1300. If you have suggestions, comments, or issues you would like addressed in future episodes, contact us at info@freetv.org. This program airs on Government Access Channel 2 and 602 in HD, or on Radio Access 102.5 FM. It's also available as a podcast on radioaccess.org and as a video viewing link at freetv.org. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of City Current.